Hello and welcome to week 1 of English 1302. This week we are going through Module 1. It's our first lecture. Let's get started. So you should have already, by now, gone through the start here and listened to that lecture, looked at the syllabus and sent me an email. You're ready to go through our first week. So first things first. In this course, we'll be looking at research reports specifically and why we write them. And we'll be going more into what it means to write a research report next week when we start getting into the chapter work. But first, we really need to get started on our authors. So, our first author that we're going to be taking a look at is Shirley Jackson. And how this course is set up is that each module is going to be for one paper. So, there'll be 3 papers. That's why we have 3 modules. Our first author is Shirley Jackson. Our second author is Kurt Vonnegut. Our third author is Isaac Asimov. For each of these authors, we're going to be reading 2 short stories, and then you'll be taking concepts from those short stories and applying them to real world situations uh, and different things, real world situations and actually literary situations and stories. They can be fictional, they can be real. It's going to be a little more interesting than just that. But our first one is Shirley Jackson, and with each module we'll be delving into who the author was and some information about them. We'll be taking a look at the 2 stories that they wrote and discussing those. And like I said, applying those to real world situations. Now, the research part of this comes in where you're going to be researching real world situations that are similar to or affected by some of the same things and themes that are talked about in the different stories. And you'll be doing various research on the internet. You'll be doing research through the Lee College Library, possibly even through Google Scholar and other sources that we're going to talk about when the time comes. But for this week, we're going to focus on introducing who Shirley Jackson is and her first 2 stories. Next week, we're going to look at the chapter work, and then we'll go on from there. So how this is laid out, we have 10 weeks, and so we're going to spend 4 weeks on the first paper, the first module. We're going to spend 3 weeks on the second and 3 weeks on the third. So that's how the module works out. We get an extra week because we have all the introduction of how to write research papers, etc. Okay, so you've already looked at the lectures. If you'll notice, each module is set up very similarly. We have the lectures, and then we have the assignments and module readings, which if you click on that, it opens it all up, and there's all the assignments that you can see. You may not be able to see all of them just yet, simply because there'll be more assignments within the module later. Like there's all the next week's assignments. But as they become available, you'll be able to see them here under the assignments and module readings. There's also videos. There will be videos that are associated with the different stories. For the lottery, we only have one. Actually, for Shirley Jackson, we only have one video, but you'll have to do the discussion questions on the story before you can see those videos. And some of them you can see and some of you won't, and it'll be in the description as to whether you can or what you need to do first. Then there's also recommended additional chapter readings for Module 1. Should you purchase the book or the ebook, the readings will be in here. But for the most part, we're going to be going over most of the things that I want you to cover in week 2. There's also all the different things that we're going to talk about. This is the information, the general information about writing research reports that we'll have in here. The basic features of a research report, what that includes, what that looks like. There's a research report writing guide, which we'll go over. Most of this we're going to go over next week. I'm just pointing it out to you. You can see it now if you want to, but I would focus more on Shirley Jackson and the stories this week. Next week, we'll talk about writing the papers when you have more of an idea of what I'm going to be asking you to do. And then you'll have a couple more weeks, 1 week of doing a couple of assignments and the rough draft, and then you'll have a week to work on your final draft and turn that in, and then we'll start the process all over again with the second paper, and we'll do the same thing with the third paper. What we won't have for the second and third papers is additional chapter work. So all of that we're going to knock out at the beginning in this first module. So yes, there are a lot of assignments in the first module, but I promise you, if you keep up with them and knock those out, once those are done, the second and third modules will not be nearly as full of assignments. All right, so let's take a look at the first assignment. You already had the email assignment, which was reading the syllabus and emailing me. So if you haven't done that yet, be sure you go through and do that. That was in the start here and in the announcements. Then there's the introduce yourself, which you shouldn't be able to see this unless you've done the introduce yourself. So you should be okay. If you haven't somehow managed to do it, go in and make sure you do the introduce yourself. That's the first discussion board. Now, our first official assignment that is strictly the assignment is the life and times of Shirley Jackson. And this is a discussion board. Like I said, a lot of our assignments are discussion boards because it's just a really good way for you to interact with your classmates and get ideas and talk about things, since we don't actually have a place to talk about it in an online class. So our first one is the life and times of Shirley Jackson. If you just click on it, I'll take you to it. And there is instructions for how to use the discussion boards. If you take a look here under discussions, the very first one is the instructions. Your post should be somewhere between 100 and 250 words. That's just a good paragraph. Making a clear point about the reading or the topic. Usually there's questions that you need to answer specifically. You can use evidence from your personal experience, assigned text or credible sources, whatever is appropriate for what you're being asked. You want to cite any quoted or paraphrased material just to show that it wasn't yours. You want to avoid summarizing, and you want to instead extend the conversation. In other words, you want to add to the conversation that's being held. When you make a post, you are making a post as part of a conversation. And when you reply to other people's posts, you are extending that conversation. To earn full credit, you must make your initial post and make meaningful comments on two classmates' posts. And there will be two due dates on discussion boards. There will be the first due date, which is where you need to make your initial post by, and then there'll be a second due date, which is usually at the end of the week, where you'll need to make a response to two classmates' posts by that. So the first one is usually, let's say if it's a new week, the first initial post to be due on Wednesday, and then usually the classmates' posts will be due by Saturday. And depending on what week it is, the discussion boards may or may not count as for attendance for the week. So usually I will pick one assignment and make that the attendance assignment, and I will put in the assignment that this counts for attendance for the week. So you'll see that. I'll also put that in the announcements. Your comments should advance the conversation and build on it, and don't just go, yeah, I agree, or yeah, that's great, or give a general attaboy. You really need to make sure that you're adding to the conversation, not just kind of there, because anybody can do that. The whole point of this is to have like a real discussion. You don't want to just critique people's writing or offer praise alone. In other words, don't say, hey, that sucks, or correct them or anything like that. You're going to want to add to the conversation and be thoughtful, and remember that you are talking to human beings, not a computer. So be mindful of that and make sure that you follow the specific instructions for each discussion board. So the very first one, like I says, the life and times of Shirley Jackson. Usually when you do the discussion boards, you won't be able to see other people's posts before you make your post. So the life and times of Shirley Jackson, also the life and times of Kurt Vonnegut and Isaac Asimov are all an exception to this. You will be able to see what other people post first before you make your post, because the whole point of this is for you to post something that nobody else has posted. So when we go to it, here it is. The first author, Shirley Jackson. You need to find at least one interesting fact about her personal life, about her body of work, or how her works are impacting us today. And you need to be the first person to report that interesting fact. In other words, you don't want to repeat a fact that somebody else has posted. So if you want to do this, you need to try and get in there and be the first person to post that. So make sure you check it and that nobody else has posted that fact and post it as soon as you can. And if somebody else has already posted the one that you wanted to post, you're going to have to find a different fact. Now, on the flip side of this, you only need to share one fact. Please don't share more than one because then you're taking away a fact from somebody else. Okay, so just share one fact and tell me why you found that interesting. We'll tell everybody why you found that interesting. And that's your initial post. And once you have finished your initial post, then you can go back and post on two other classmates' posts. Now, if you're the very first person to make the initial post, you'll have to come back after other people have posted, obviously. So don't forget, set yourself an alarm if you need to not forget to come back and make those reply posts. Otherwise, you won't get full credit for the assignment. Um, but again, just remain respectful of each other and watch your due dates. They'll both be over here. So they'll tell you right here, due date 1, you submit one post by 6/3, which is a Wednesday. Um, Again, the posts are what you're posting. That's what nobody else has posted yet. And then the replies are where you go and look at somebody's posts and make a reply to that. And those are due by 6/6, so 3 days later. Okay. And that's the very first assignment. It's the life and times of Shirley Jackson. Now, that's if you take a look at the calendar, which I find super, super cool. This is all of what's due this week. So our weeks run from Sunday to Saturday, and there'll be assignments that might be due on Wednesday and assignments that are due on Saturday. So be sure you're aware of what day they're due. So the first due date for the life and times of Shirley Jackson is Wednesday, and then see the second due dates down here on Saturday for the two other posts, or the two replies, I'm sorry. The introduce yourself is also due by Wednesday, and there were no replies. You didn't have to reply on that one if you didn't want to. The email assignment is due by 6/6. That's where you go read the syllabus and then send me an email from your official Lee College email. Now, the other two assignments we have are the actual two short stories that we are reading for this author. The first one is called The Lottery, and the second one is called The Possibility of Evil. Now, The Lottery is Shirley Jackson's most famous short story. And this is how actually all of our stories are going to be set up. So you need to read the story and answer these discussion questions, which are right here. There's 7 for this one. When you write your paper, here are the notations you would use in order to reference this paper or this story. So these are important. I will try to remind you of these later when we are looking at writing the papers. But first and foremost, let's get through the stories and make sure we understand what's going on. So how this is set up is I have an audio file here of someone reading the story. In this case, it's actually Shirley Jackson herself reading The Lottery, which is kind of cool. I have one other story of the author reading it themselves, and I think these are actually really awesome. So when you click on it, you'll be able to follow along with Shirley Jackson actually reading The Lottery to you. Now, here is a PDF of The Lottery. And again, you can download this. You can just read it here. My suggestion is that you read through the story first before you listen to it. And then perhaps listen to it and read along with it. So it kind of reinforces what's going on in the story because it's important for you to have an understanding of what's going on. So again, here's the PDF right here. Here is where you can listen to the story. It'll be a YouTube that opens up. And then there's the discussion questions. Now, when you turn in the discussion questions, you're just going to turn them in here at the submission. It won't show it to me because I'm not a student, but there'll be a submission screen down here where you can either type in your answers directly into the submission box, or you can upload a file. My suggestion is that you upload a file. In other words, type your answers to these questions in complete sentences so they make sense in a Word document or a Google Docs, and then upload that here to submission and submit it, because that way you have a copy of what you did saved someplace else other than Blackboard, because if you just type it into Blackboard, there's no other copy. And if something happens with Blackboard, which it's notorious for, then that will absolutely be lost. And that is not something that you're going to want to have to retype. So yeah, if something should glitch, if the power should go out, if the cat should jump on your keyboard and hit the wrong buttons and close the window, any answers you typed in there are probably going to be lost. So it's just a good idea to save your work on a separate document and upload that document for most of our assignments. If you have any questions about that, I can answer those more directly, but that's really the way it is. And then, so we've got the lottery, and then you've also got the possibility of evil. Now I'm clicking through these through the calendar, which you can get to. Here's the possibility of evil. Now I wish that I had Shirley Jackson reading the story, but unfortunately I don't. Instead, we have another voice actor, C.S. Jackson, reading the story. No relation to Shirley Jackson, as far as I know. But again, same format. You've got the audio here. You've got the PDF of the story here. And then you've got discussion questions to answer. And you'll submit them here. And those will be the two major assignments that we're looking at for the end of this week. Now, if we go back here, we can get to it from this module right here. So you've got the life and times of Shirley Jackson, the lottery, and the possibility of evil. So that is what we are working on for the first week. We're just jumping right into our author. Like I said, we'll be looking at what it means to write a research paper next week. More than anything, I wanted to get you familiar with our authors and get working on that. But also, this gives time if you need to purchase the textbook. Again, I wouldn't look at trying to access the textbook until next week unless you are for sure that you would like to purchase a copy of it, or if you already have that information and you want to enter it here if you're using the ebook, that's fine. If you have any questions, be sure to send me an email. But remember, there is like a free trial on the textbook that you'll want to sign up for next week when you open it. I would only open this next week. It'll come up and it'll ask you for your email. For me, it's already going to go into it for me because I've been into it. But for you, it'll ask you for your email. It'll ask you if you want to do the free trial. This is what it looks like. The ISBN number is on the syllabus if you'd like to try and purchase it from someplace like Amazon or Half Price Books or Abe Books or various other places online. But that's it. If you have any questions, be sure to give me a call. Make sure you watch the videos, read the announcements. Welcome to the class. I hope you enjoy it. Until next week, I am Professor Smith. Email me if you need me.